All right, welcome to the Qabalah Primer. If you noticed, if you've been following my YouTube, I made some videos, and these were videos that I made a long time ago for the members, but I decided to take them down because those were just classes, right? And I went through them quite fast, and I know a lot of this information, so I try to put it all in once and just spit it out of my mind, and it wasn't near the quality or slow enough that it could be. And I think for us to take all the stuff in, if you haven't already, then there's a proper way to do this. So in other words, I told myself I need to slow down and start at the beginning. The reason why I'm doing this is because throughout all the years of doing the radio show, over, I would say 10 or 11 years now, I started studying and doing this stuff before I even got into radio. And still do. I'm still a student. I'm still a student today and always will be. But I want to share what I've learned through my journeys and my void walking journeys of trying to discover truth, okay, so that I can share with you what I know and then let you decide. But I will tell you the things that I believe or my opinions on the subject and all of these things, okay? First and foremost, the Qabalah itself, especially the Hermetic Qabalah, is the basis for all of the secret societies, the Western secret society specifically, I would say. So any secret society that is based around Rosicrucianism or magic or any of that stuff has its roots and origins and should understand these teachings. That's the good ones and the bad ones. So that's what I was looking for. Natural law, the truth, what is working for everything and everyone before we get down here and decide what we decide. So here's the Qabalah primer that I made. This is going to be as quick and painless as possible, and I hope that you soak up this stuff. If you don't know anything about it, there's tons of stuff and tons of research on it, but this is what I've learned. So we're going to talk about a very brief introduction of the history of it. I'll probably do a whole other segment for that, maybe even some shows on it. Different methods of study and the tree of life and its parts. I'm going to go to the next slide here. So it's history. As you can see, I'm not a design major, but this was still pretty fun making. So it's history. It's suspected origin, not proven, but suspected, that it was taught by God and the angels. Now, if you want to say it's aliens or whatever, that's all your thing. I'm only looking for what's true. So that's a suspected origin. But if you study it and you trace it back as far as you can trace it back, and I mean as far as you can trace it back, it goes all the way back to what's called Merkaba mysticism. Merkaba means chariot which carried the throne of God. It's also talked about in Ezekiel. I only know one person, and I'm sure there are other people that have looked into this, but I only know one person that I've seen that's really dug into this deeply, more than I have at all by any means. You have to look her name up. Her name's Bathsheba Ash. Not saying there's no one else. That's just who I've noticed. Okay. And also the last part is, once you get into the history of it, you'll see that there was a 2nd century merger between Jewish Gnosticism and Neoplatonism. Now, this was, there'll be books that I recommend where I learned all this stuff too. I'll leave those in the video links, and I will leave this pamphlet somewhere where everybody can have all these slides and PDFs and stuff for free. Because we're going to get into everything. I'm just going to step it in the order that I've learned it. Okay. So the study and practice is what we're going to get into next. So the first study and practice of this would be called the Holy Qabalah. And if you'll notice, I've spelled them different because you see them sometimes with K's and spelled with C's and Q's. Some people say, well, the K spelling is the Jewish thing and the C spelling is the Christian one or Hermetic one, and the Q is the Hermetic Qabalah. I'm just spelling it different so that I'm hoping that you don't get polar about this. You need to study all of it. But the first study and practice would be the Holy Qabalah, which is the Hebrew mystery teachings or Judaist esotericism. And this claims its roots all the way back to the start of the Hebrew religion And if you look at the word itself, it means to receive. Qabalah or Qabel means to receive. You could say that means to receive wisdom, knowledge, or just to receive, period. And then the next method would be the practical Qabalah. How do we put this into use? These main teachings are stooped in meditative techniques, praying, and ceremonial magic. This is how the Qabalah is practically used. Then there is the letter Qabalah, which is a system for coding and decoding biblical messages, hidden messages revealed through a system called gematria. I'm not a grammar Nazi, so I don't really care how you say it. But if you understand it, that is built upon 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, which have different numerical meanings. Words also have numerical value, and this gives a deeper mystical explanation of words, letters, even stories. You can look up stories in the Bible and find that that there's some pretty cool stuff in there. There's some hidden stuff, right? I mean, there are said to be hidden messages that can be revealed with this system. It is also said that words with the same numerical value are said to explain one another. And those words, or these words that have the same numerical value, they hold a mystical connection. Again, that's not, I went into it a little ways when I studied builders of the atom material, but I didn't, and Paul Foster Case, but I didn't dive as deep as I possibly could. Next is the unwritten or holy Qabalah. And this describes a symbolic system that creates a diagram called the tree of life. This tree is created of 10 different aspects of God, connected by 22 paths, and all of this creates a philosophic system. Some people call this the man of the universe, but each of the 10 aspects and 22 paths are related to a number of objects and subjects as well. It creates correspondences, which is a law in Hermetics, right? Like you could say divine names, angels, metals, stones, herbs, etc. This is something that ceremonial magicians highly value. And they kept these things a secret in their magical orders until Aleister Crowley and Israel Regardie and Dion Fortune started putting out material. I think Crowley was the first, but who cares? It was no longer a secret, and it is no longer a secret today. So if you want to know what incenses, stones, herbs, all kinds of stuff correspond with what, there's plenty of books on it. A Liber 77 is a 777 is a good one. You can get tons of books of correspondences, but I would, if I was you, vet this stuff. Go out in nature and study it yourself. Please. I think that's the best way to find out if stuff is real or not, right? Read it, study it, apply it, go out in nature and see if it's there. Okay, the next is the dogmatic Qabalah. This consists of all the traditional texts like Torah, or I guess you could say Genesis, or Talmud, or the Sefer Yetzirah, the Sefer Bahir, and the Sefer Zohar. So the Sefer Yetzirah, which is also called the Book of Creation, which was written 200 to 300 years after Christ. This mirrors a lot of the Gnostic and New Platonic attitude of the world. This is where discusses 10 emanations, like the 10 Sephiroth, who are identical with 10 aspects of the tree of life. Then there's the Sefer Bahir, which was written in the 12th century, but it's also said to have its roots about 100 years after Christ. And in this text, 6 of the 10 Sephirah are mentioned and given fundamental explanation. Then there's the Sefer Zohar, which is written in the 13th century, but it's also said to have its roots 100 years after Christ. And this will give comments on the Torah and gives a complete description of the Sephiroth, God's face, and human souls. So, based on what we know so far, a philosophy is coming together over the years since Christ, and is said to come together even before then, right? So it can describe, in my opinion, you can learn things through this, with the help of the teachings of the Qabalah. If you have questions like, well, what is the highest presence? What are the attributes or the laws of nature? What is our cosmogen, or the origin, I guess you could say, where we come from? The creation of the angels and the humans, the soul or the soul's nature. You can even get into stuff like angels, demons, and elementals. The importance of the law or natural law, the symbolism of numbers and geometry, things like that. The Hebrew letters and their mysteries, and balancing our dual nature. What I came to my own conclusions about all this, and these are my conclusions that I put on here, is this does describe the nature of our souls, which can be described through three aspects with different aspects, traits, and purposes, that these teachings mirror the Hermetic picture of the body, soul, and spirit. And I believe that Qabalah is a beautiful and complicated system that teaches man about the path for the human soul to resurrection and union with its original state in paradise, to become the new Adam, so to speak, to rule over your human nature and become Christ-like, or an anointed king. This is what we're striving to be based on our decisions, day after day, moment after moment, right? All right, so let's get into the parts of the tree. So there's the 10 spheres or Sephiroth. There are 10 circles or spheres that represent the 10 Sephiroth. Starting from the top down, they go in this order: Kether, Chokmah, Bina. So you can see Kether at the top, Chokmah top right, Bina top left. The next one's down, which would be number 4 is Chesed, and then Geburah, number 5. Number 6 is Tifereth, Netzach, number 7. Hod, number 8, Yesod, number 9, and 10 be of Malkuth. And once you get into this, these spheres are awesome. There's stories inside themselves. The Mystical Qabalah by Dion Fortune is a great book to read about all these energies. And then you learn where the tarot cards correspond inside them, and we'll talk about all that too. This tree also creates 3 pillars. The right one is white, which represents the pillar of mercy, and the left one is black and represents severity. Both pillars are dualistic and represent the dualistic nature of things, male and female, twilight and dawn, positive, negative, or the eternal play in our reality of the opposites. It's funny too, like when most people learn this stuff, thinking, well, that just means that morality is subjective. It actually does not mean that. You'll see why here in a second. All right, so the 2 pillars have their own teachings. There's some pretty cool texts that the Golden Dawn made about the pillars. The pillars, which remember, the biggest thing to remember is that unbalanced force is evil. Unbalanced severity is cruelty and oppression and domination and slavery. But also unbalanced mercy is weakness, which would allow evil to exist unchecked. So if you're just a loving lighter all the time and you don't ever want to like stand your ground, hurt anybody, defend yourself, whatever, which is not something that we like to do. It's something that we have to do, because to leave that stuff unchecked would be allow evil to run amok. This isn't something I made up. This is taught. It's been taught since the beginning of time, since this stuff has been out. So the middle pillar represents mildness. It represents all of what I just said, that there's a need for the union of the 2 opposites and a new and higher integrity. The middle pillar is the symbolic, the way of the return, or the path of redemption. Now the 10 Sephiroth are created in numeric order. I talked about that earlier. So the word Sephiroth comes from the Hebrew meaning book or number, or a tale to tell. It's also been described as emanations. The 10 Sephiroth are like cups that are static but carry and transfer the forces that pass through them. So just like I said earlier when I was describing the first triangle, that Kether goes into Chokmah, and now those 2 energies exist there. And then Kether and Chokmah go into Bina. Now those 3 energies exist there, etc., etc. See how it goes down the flaming sword. The Golden Dawn described them as cups that receive and transfer a life force, or LVX, or Luke's energy in creation. So when a cup is filled with light, it floods over and pours down to the cup below it until all cups are filled. You'll see this in a lot of Golden Dawn decks or cards, or even in the Crowley cards. Some maybe newer decks as well will show this. Each Sephira is perfectly balanced by its opposite, and each path is perfectly balanced between the two Sephiroth which it connects, and of the path opposite to it. So this is something that you get into when you get into the meditations and path working, is you tap into the energies between them to understand both energies, its opposite, everything. Glyph, or the tree, compounds into two symbols, God in miniature, or the microcosm, and God in the greater universe. It's not a picture that I threw up, but it's pretty easy to understand once you put the human body against it. The right hand goes with Qabalah, you could say, and the left hand, which is said, right shoulder Bina, left shoulder Chokmah, and down and so forth. And you'll see these pictures all over the internet. It kind of tells the story how God created us in his image. Or him or her. Okay, so the 10 spheres are Sephiroth, but now we're going to talk about the flaming sword and the triangles, which I was mentioning earlier. So the tree itself evolved organically over time and sequentially. That is the philosophy of its origin story. Following the path of the flaming sword is how it did this. So the flaming sword shows which energies created the next energy, then the next, and the next. And it also, when you get into magic, you'll see that this is kind of how things are supposed to come into manifestation, that kind of thing. What it doesn't show is the sphere of Da'ath, right? So if you follow it down over time, if you follow the flaming sword, Kether, then Chokmah, then Bina, then these three form the first supernal triangle. You could call this Father, Son, Holy Spirit. You could call this Mother, not Mother, but God, then Mother, then Father. The Eternal Father, the Eternal Mother. A lot of times when you hear people, in my opinion, describing God the Father, they're describing Chokmah energy. Or when they're describing Mother Gaia, they're describing the Bina energy. But that first triad, all three, remember, end up in Bina. Then the hidden sphere of Da'ath, which is, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, but we'll get into this when we get into the progression of understanding this stuff, which is located here, right? The hidden sphere of Da'ath bridged a new triangle, which it made moral and ethics. So the very next two energies that came down was morals and ethics. Just said Qabalah, then Tiferet, and formed the ethical triangle. Right and wrong. So according to all of the Western secret societies and all the stuff that we know and all the Manly P. Hall lectures, when you really get into this, the second energies that were created were morals. Upon that, another triangle formed, which is called the astral triangle, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod, which then created Malkuth, or the final creation of Earth. Malkuth is separated and removed from the tree. You'll see this in other glyphs too, where it doesn't even have paths connected to it. This has been described in Yesod, which is this sphere here, right above Malkuth. The spiritual perfection of Kether. At the same time, this whole process has been called the fall. So Malkuth is supposed to be the spiritual and physical reflection of Kether, the top, very top sphere. But the process itself has also been called the fall. And if you read any of the Genesis stories or anything like that, it goes perfectly along with it. Get to the next slide here. All right, next part is the three parts of the soul. The main parts of the soul are three: the Neshama, the Ruach, and the Nefesh. The Neshama is comprised of the Yekidah and the Chiyat. the entire supernal triad. All three energies are gathered into Bina as a triad of one. We'll get into the specifics of all this stuff later. The Ruach, which is the next part down, which is our goal. That is the goal of a sound mind and reason between heaven and earth and the pillars. Its beauty when perfected in Tifereth and the ultimate way or being. And at last, and the final one at the bottom, is what is called the Nefesh, which is our own animal instincts, our earthly and unconscious behaviors as an animalistic human. Later we'll learn that sphere of Doth is right there, and the Ruach is kind of made up of all of these, and it's balanced right here in Tifereth. Here you can kind of see the three stages of the mysteries too, right? You'll see the moon, the sun, and the stars. You could put them in degrees, however you want. Magic, alchemy, astrology. You'll start to see all this stuff come together. All right, so the four worlds of creation are the next thing that we're going to discuss. So this is the parts of the man and its parts to be consecrated and purified to better know and connect with the higher self. The origin of the four elements in Hermetic magic is also where this comes from, or where it gets its ideas from, and the process of manifestation from heaven to earth, from mind to action, and from the unmanifest to manifest. So you can see that at the very top, Atziluth is the world of archetypes. Right there, it corresponds with that kind of sphere or dimension or section where the head is. In other words, it's saying that everything in the universe comes from the mind, or the all mind. The next part is the world of Bria or creation, which is also corresponds with our morals, or that moral energy we discussed earlier. And here you can see that he's holding all the constellations around his heart. And then below that is the world of Yetzir, or the world of formation, which you could see is our solar system and the planets. And then at the bottom is the world of Asaya, which is the world of action. And you can see he's got one foot, his left foot on the earth, and his right foot in the water. I thought that was a pretty good picture to put with that. All right, get to the next slide. Continuing with the four worlds of creation, you'll also see that this is the primordial, or the first kind of, or the first elements. So Atziluth, the archetypal world, the element of fire, the primordial element of fire, or the Yod force energies. Bria, the creative world, the world of morals, emotions, reason, and ethics, which corresponds with the element of water and the first Hay force energies. And then you go down a little more, you have the Yetzirah, which is the formative world, the world of mind forces and the beings, blueprints, the astral world, which is the element of air and the Vav force energies. And then finally at the bottom, the world of Asaya, the manifest or active world, the world of dense and solid matter, and actions as the element of earth. This is where you get that word Yehovah, or Yod He Vav He, from, or what's called the Tetragrammaton. So here are my final thoughts, and these are the questions that I want you to ask yourself. Because like I said, any student that's learned something after a while has to teach it, but you never stop becoming a student. And I don't claim to be a know-it-all or any of that stuff, but I can tell you through my experience, this has been one of the most profound and life-changing teachings that I've learned, okay? So here's some questions that I'd like you to ask yourself. How many different philosophical, religious, and transformative systems are here that exist inside here? I have found many. The numerical things of manifestation, numerology, sacred geometry, all of the religious systems, lots of caste systems are in here. You can even put gods in certain spheres and they all line up. It seems to me these energies all line up with lots of things. Does the wisdom and understanding of these teachings show us a way and a path to true freedom, authenticity, true love, and a better life? I think that's what a lot of people are worried about. Does it show us, does it give it to us? No. Does it show us how to get there, or how things become manifest? If I studied nature, myself, others, and the universe inside and out as much as I possibly could as a human? Would the teachings of the Qabalah, regardless of their origins, line up with my truthful, authentic self? Would it help explain the so-called bigger mysteries? The stuff I think everybody should ask themselves whenever they're studying anything. I know these questions seem rhetorical, and in a way they are, but only if I was asking myself. How do the 7 Hermetic principles align and work with the understanding and practice of these things? What other systems, mystery schools, religions, etc. align with these teachings, or would it fit into the tree? I mentioned that earlier. And if you followed these understandings and wisdom to the letter, would you indeed understand yourself, others' nature, and nature, certain religions and existence more? If so, would you become more conscious, aware, happy, and make different decisions? Could you indeed live a free and fruitful life? I love this picture too, and we're wrapping this one up. And this is kind of one of the beginner things, but we're wrapping this up so I can show you that you can see where the earth lies in these energies. In this picture, you can see where the cloudy astral realm lies within these pictures. You can see where morality and your heart lines up with this, and then the energies at the top. And the first energies are what? Wisdom and understanding, which is what Chokma and Bina mean. Then there's a hidden energy that mirrors upon itself into this blue and red energy, which is mercy and severity and morality and your emotions and the world of the cups. So in my opinion, for the people to say, well, my emotions don't matter. Like you haven't even studied your emotions yet. You don't even know how just important they are. How much your heart spawns everything about you into existence. Everything you do and everything you allow. And then the next, as you go through Tiferet, or that Christ-like energy down into the astral world, you have Netzach and Hod, which is pretty much, if you looked at it really quick, you'd say, well, that's Venus and that's pleasure and all this other stuff. And Hod is like intellectual messages and knowledge and science. You could look at it as pleasure and intellectual stimulation if you want to. See, once you really get into these spheres, you'll see that it's not just one thing. And then when you study all things about it, you'll say, oh, you'll get to know the energy better because they all exist in those spheres. It's a really cool system. And all of our systems of magic, our tarot cards, our modern tarot cards, all of the things that we have now are based upon it. It is a knowledge that all of the major and even secret societies we don't know about understand. I would think that would make it important enough. All right, so next, I think what we'll get into is a deeper understanding of the tree and probably the elements. Thanks for watching this, you guys.